Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Believe in Bengal podcast with Solomon Wilcots right here on Valley Sports, Ohio. And right now, we're joined by a very special guest, Cincinnati Bengals radio analyst Dave Lapham joins us on the show. Dave, how you doing today?
Solly, how you doing, my man?
Hey, I'm doing great. Look, and I had to have you on simply because anytime the Cincinnati Bengals and the San Francisco 49ers meet, it brings up memories, and they're not good ones. You know what I'm saying?
No,
So
no.
help me to help our listeners and our viewers to feel very comfortable about this trip that we're getting ready to make, going out west to take on a pissed off 49ers team.
That's exactly a good way to put it. I mean, Solly, the first 5 games of the season, they didn't score less than 30 points. They were a juggernaut. I mean, the points scored, the points allowed differential was like astronomical. It was crazy. And then they came back down to earth a little bit. They haven't scored 20 points in the last 2 games and lost both of them. And I think that's going to be what the Bengals are going to have to do is not let that offense get back on track, because we know Shanahan, man, that guy's got a creative running game. They're going to have to control McCaffrey. I think he's the head of the snake.
Yeah.
It looked to me like on Monday night he wasn't, 100%. He only averaged 3 yards a carry on 15 carries, 45 yards, and he did score a touchdown in 16 straight games, though. That's crazy. But the offense, the Bengals offense, I'm real interested, Solly, to see the coaches had a bunch of wrinkles they were going to install. Well, Joe has the calf injury. Now they couldn't do it because he's very limited how much he can get him out of pocket. They've only been under center 7 snaps, Solly. 7 snaps in 6 football games. Last year they were under center 200 snaps. That just tells you. I'm hoping that after the bye that they're under center more. They get their running game going, play action a little bit. I know they're like the RPOs and all that from the gun, but man, I'm hoping I see some of the stuff that they were going to utilize early in the season that they kind of put on the back burner because of the medical limitations. Hopefully they start to indoctrinate a lot of that stuff.
You talked about this 49ers team, the first 5 games, they started off 5-0, scoring 30 or more points in all 5 of those games. Last 2 games against Cleveland and again in the Monday night game, only 17 points scored. So clearly trying to keep the point total down. Christian McCaffrey's dealing with an oblique injury. Deebo Samuel's not expected to play. He's still dealing with a shoulder injury. Right. I can tell you right now, Trent Williams, the left tackle, who did not play in the Monday night game with an ankle injury, high ankle sprain. He could play. I think it's going to be 50-50. But I want you to just give our listeners and our viewers a little bit more on why it's important, because the 49ers are one of those teams, whether it was Joe Montana, whether it was Steve Young, and now Brock Purdy or Jeff Garcia, or even Jimmy Garoppolo, they operate under center. Yeah, they do some shotgun, but you and I both know they are a primary run team. And it's always been important from Bill Walsh to Kyle Shanahan to have the quarterback under center. These offenses, the Bengals and 49ers, they have a lot in common. So why is it important to have at least some semblance of your offense where the quarterback is operating under center?
Yeah, I mean, it's if you can't marry your run game to your passing game, and Bill Walsh was the best at it. Right. I mean, his play action passing game was, revolutionary back in the 70s and early 80s when he was doing his thing. But I mean, that's critical. And they run the ball so effectively. I mean, they're so creative with motion, shifts, counters. A little bit of it with Seattle. Seattle does some of the things that the 49ers do, but nobody does it as well as the San Francisco 49ers. And man, when you can get under center and run that offense and then play action off of it, that's tough. I mean, you know better than anybody, Solly. Linebackers and safeties in the middle of the field, they want to mess with, I mean, they want you to see things. They want you to see things that you shouldn't be seeing, kind of deal, and that's a big part of their game for sure.
Well, there's no doubt about it. The league's number 1 ranked rushing attack is the Miami Dolphins, and they are averaging 181 rush yards per game up until they ran into the Philadelphia Eagles defense, where they only had 45 yards rushing. Remember, their head coach, Mike McDaniel, he was the run game coordinator for the 49ers up until last year when he became the head coach
Right.
of the Miami Dolphins. So critical in understanding how motions, shifts, and all of that, it really works to keep the defense off balance as you're really using the run game to set up shots in the pass game. One last question before we let you go, because I know you're busy. Talk to me about what we could expect from our Cincinnati Bengals coming off the bye. We're at 3-3 at 500. How are we going to use this time off to not only get better by getting some rest, but from a scheme standpoint, how can we get better on each side of the ball?
I think offensively, Solly, it's going to be very interesting because Brian Callahan, prior to them going on the bye week, he had an impassioned meeting with the offensive players and called guys out, and that hadn't been done very often here under this regime. And said he basically isn't good enough. Some things have to change here, and he didn't exclude himself, which is mandatory. But I think that was interesting to go into the bye week. So I think, man, if they can just, in my mind, in the running game has to improve in two areas. Offensive line, finish blocks better. Running back, make the first guy miss. The first guy's not missing often enough. And offensive linemen aren't finishing blocks quite well enough. I don't care what the schematic is. If you do those two things, you're going to improve the game. And I do think during the bye week, they probably famously, like 2 years ago when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, Frank Pollock switched from an inside-outside zone running team to a gap scheme and, pin and pull and totally different. I don't think they're going to do anything that drastic, but I do think they're going to tweak their running game. And I think they're going to say, are we doing the right thing with the right people, and let's evaluate all of this. So that's going to be interesting. And then defensively, I think Lou Anarumo is going to hone in on doing more of his what he's really good at, the disguising, bluffing pressure, bringing pressure, different configurations, different looks, using his versatile defensive personnel to line up in a bunch of different looks. I mean, I think he's going to bring that to another level after the bye.
Blocking, tackling, hit, run to the ball, and hustle, effort and energy always tends to hold true when it comes to winning games. And the 49ers,
no doubt,
the thing they force you to do on defense, you have to recognize plays, but they force you to tackle in space. Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, they can make guys miss in space. And if you can't tackle in space, you can't beat them. They move the chains on you and they find a way to the end zone simply because they know how to break tackles and create yards after catch, yards after contact, Dave. You know that.
Absolutely. And that was an issue for Lou Anarumo's group in the, like games 3 and 4, they were missing like a dozen tackles or more, 12, 14 tackles, where normally they're a 4 to 5 missed tackle team. And they got back to that, as they started to improve and win football games again. But that's good. You're right, Solly. That's going to be critical. Who's going to make people miss?
Well, I like the fact that Brian Callahan calling some guys out. I do think the Bengals fans have been very steadfast and loyal through some real tough times and through the slow start. They maintain, I think, a high sense of loyalty because these are players that we all really love and like and we cheer for. But it is time to step it up a little bit. Some of the teams in that AFC North starting to pull away. And sometimes, as you well know, instead of dangling the carrot, you got to use the stick. So it's quite all right.
And you got to start winning AFC games, Solly. 49ers, they sweep the NFC West. They sweep that division. But, man, and tiebreakers, as we know, you got to start winning AFC games. You got to start winning division games, man. I mean, don't get me wrong, take wins. You got to have wins, too. But, man, you got to start stacking some against the AFC.
Yeah, things are about to get real around the National Football League as we're approaching the trade deadline and teams are starting to solidify themselves. Baltimore Ravens starting to pull away in the standings. So week 8 is going to be very critical for the Cincinnati Bengals as they head to Levi Stadium to take on the San Francisco 49ers. Cincinnati Bengals radio analyst Dave Lapham joining us right here on the Believe in Bengal podcast on Valley Sports Ohio. We'll be back with more after this.
Make sure you check out Bet Online for all of your sports betting needs. For anything that I do betting related, I go on over to betonline.ag and I use promo code BELIEVE50. BetOnline has all of the latest updated odds for the NFL and college football seasons. Anything you need, whether it's futures, live in-game betting, no matter what, your football betting needs are met at BetOnline. And again, make sure you use that promo code BELIEVE50, BLEAV50 to get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.